It is over 4 years ago when I wrote the first of my articles. And from the outset, the machinery of the Labour Party, Oldham Council, the cartels, and everything that you now know to be true, the mainstream media, Charlotte Green, Jennifer Williams, all of them, the pyjama-wearing ponce, all were mobilised. All with one sole aim: to silence the Recusant 9 transmissions, what became the Recusant 9 transmissions. When we started, I think at best 100 of my friends read my work, shared my work, and openly challenged all of those who would demonize me and portray me as something I am not, I have never been, and I never will be. And just this week gone, despite multiple videos being taken down for exploiting defamation rules within YouTube, which is fine. Despite all of that, over 5,000 different people, over 5,000 different people in just under a week have engaged with what I have to share. Now you tell me why it is they want to shut me down.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011, he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.
It is Sunday, the 18th of December. My name is Raja Mia, and this is part 9 of the final sequence of the Recusant 9 transmissions. Unfortunately, we have not got to our minimum funding target, and this, sorry, I'm just closing my, as it stands, this will be the final of the transmission, final one of the transmissions. Let's get on with this evening's, well, what we do. I want to recap on, I want to start where I think, for me, the fight has been the most. When we started this fight, remember, it was a far-right conspiracy. It was a far-right conspiracy, and despite the reports coming out in Manchester, in Kirklees, in Sheffield, no one had joined the dots up the way we had. And, well, look what we've done. Look what we've done. I'm going to play this again, I'm afraid, because it was embedded in one of the previous transmissions that got took down. It's GB News. It's the young man, Charlie. I own none of these rights, but I want you to hear this, and then I want to pick up on it.
What's coming up for us there?
Well, I'm making a documentary for GB News on this grooming gang scandal. Across the country, GB News has reported from and researched up to 50 different towns and cities where we think these crimes have taken place. Many of them have avoided police attention, many of them have avoided media attention, and we are hoping to rectify that with our campaign.
Why have many of them avoided media and police attention, do you think?
Well, the two towns have captured most of the public's attention. That's Rotherham and Oldham. Yep. Both of them have enjoyed inquiries led by independent government bodies. But the others, I think, people don't understand just the grave extent of this crisis. And the main reason for that, I think you and I both know, is the racial nervousness around the ethnicity of the background of the perpetrators and the disparity between perpetrators and victims, often men of Pakistani ethnicity and young white working class girls from troubled backgrounds. This creates a lot of anxiety for certain people, but we are looking to push straight past that and be honest and tell the truth on this problem.
Yeah, it's about time somebody did that, actually. And the fact is, this is a pandemic, an epidemic, isn't it?
It is. And when we had the Rotherham reports, about a decade ago now, the scale of the problem wasn't known. And we had a report from Alexis J came in and said that there were 1,400 victims. This is a town of 140,000 people. So 1% of the entire town. Yeah. And that's just one small sliver of the population were enduring this horrific abuse. When the National Crime Agency came in, Britain's FBI, they found another 100 victims. So Operation Stovewood by the NCA found another 100. So we want an NCA investigations into every single town and city where significant and credible reports of these rape gangs has taken place. Because when we have these investigations, we invariably find more victims, more perpetrators, and more people waiting for justice.
And that's what you're calling...
Okay. So, he got it wrong, though. Oldham did not have an independent inquiry, and he's got in touch with me to confirm that and to apologise, and he got caught up in the moment, and that's fine. All of that's fine. The young man is doing some admirable work. But what is describing about racial nervousness, an epidemic? Not my words, before Greater Manchester Police want to come and arrest me. These are the news on a national news channel. An epidemic. And what's now repeatedly come out is an explanation of, I'd say, a number of the factors as to why this epidemic has been allowed to take place. Grow, expand, which is what epidemics do. First and foremost, it is the negative judgments to which those in positions of power and influence had towards the demographics of the victims. They were white, they were working class, and they were described in completely derogatory terms. And repeatedly, the narrative was they were partners in what had took place to them, and they were asking for it. These were 9-year-old, 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old children, 14-year-old children. Now, what is being described there? And not one of them will join the dots that are clearly there. For any one of you who've worked in this field that I have, what I'm describing to you, what is being described, the ignoring of crimes committed against a certain demographic group because of their ethnicity and class. What is being described is what I was taught as being institutional racism. But none of them will use the phrase institutional racism to describe why thousands, tens of thousands, and we're in the tens of thousands, if not the hundreds of thousands, now I'm going to say it, hundreds of thousands, why hundreds of thousands of working class white girls have been gang raped and trafficked, and the authorities failed them. The reason they failed them was because of their prejudice towards this demographic group. And that prejudice is the correct term, as confirmed by Macpherson following the murder and the failings of Stephen Lawrence in the Macpherson report. I went this morning and revisited the exact criteria, and it matches. What is being described is institutional racism. There is no ambiguity here. It is just old-fashioned institutional racism. And yet, whilst the fake liberal middle-class metropolitan elite and the Labour Party politicians and council officers across the country have been lining up for 2 decades now to fight institutional racism when it affects black communities, Muslim communities, all of the minority communities that it's fashionable to defend. when it comes to this, sorry, my microphone, okay. There you go, that should do it. When it comes to this, not one of them will confirm what is taking place is institutional racism. Not one of them will confirm what is taking place is institutional racism. Why? Okay, let's move to the second feature of what's taking place here. The second feature of what is taking place here is the fear of the demographic background of the majority of perpetrators. And we've got to that. It's took us many years. We should describe them as Asian grooming gangs. In fact, when I started, I also described them as Asian grooming gangs. But the term Asian grooming gang is comprehensively inaccurate. These grooming gangs are predominantly Pakistani, occasionally Bangladeshi, and almost exclusively Muslim. And the perpetrators' motives is a second reason why these are racially motivated crimes, and they should be recorded as racially motivated crimes, but they're not. Time after time after time, the victims have repeatedly told us that whilst they were being raped and whilst they were being trafficked, the perpetrators legitimized what they did because of their demographic backgrounds, because they were white and because they were Christian. Or non-Muslim rather than Christian. And again, I go back to the Macpherson interpretation of institutional racism and what is a racially motivated crime. And again, these are racially motivated crimes as per the official criteria. The perpetrators did what they did, in part, at the very least, because of the racial and religious backgrounds of the victims. Completely ignored. And the third reason that we've unearthed so far, and the likes of Charlie and all those at GB News and some progressive, some brave journalists, none of them in the Manchester Evening News, none of them in the Oldham Times or the Oldham Chronicle, or Kevin Fitzpatrick from the BBC, who valued his friendship with Jim McMahon. The third reason is this belief that speaking out would damage, and I use in inverted commas because this is the term they use, community relations. They believed that speaking out against a gang rape of little girls by one demographic group towards another would damage community relations. I'm still trying to work that one out. Over the last 4 or 5 years, if I take that at face value, forget what I think, if I take that at face value, I'm still trying to work that out. So you sat silently on your hands and looked the other way and failed to speak out, failed to raise awareness, failed to make arrests, failed to report if you're a journalist because of a fear of community relations. The fourth reason, and it's in the reports, it's even in the Burnham report, into Oldham review, was this thing around the fear of the far right. Now, community relations and the fear of the far right, they use the word terms interwoven, sometimes replace one for the other, but they're not. They're two different things. The fear of the far right in these reports is reference to a political aspect of what's taking place. In Oldham, they claim one of the reasons they kept it quiet was because of the BNP were campaigning at the time, and there was an election. Now, the last time I looked, and I find them completely unpalatable, and every variation of parties like this completely unpalatable, but we do live in a democracy. The BNP are a legally constituted political party, and they had every right to stand in an election. And it is not, and it should not be, the role of the police or the council to hide information in the public interest, because that information might be used by one political party to benefit themselves. Just what exactly has been taking place over the last 3 or 4 years in every other dimension of politics. Every political party takes what comes out in the news, and if they can, they use it for their benefit. And if they can, they try and suppress it because it affects them adversely. It was never the role of the police, and it was definitely never the role of the council to decide what news could come out, factual news could come out, because it would benefit one political party. And I say this, looking at myself in the camera, as a person with dark skin who's a Muslim. But I believe in a democracy, and it wasn't the council's place. If a political party wanted to use the grooming and gang rape of children for political benefit, then it had every right to do so in a democracy. And that's where I wanted to start this evening's transmission. To strip it all down to its bare bones, and those are the bare bones of the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of our town's children. The reasons provided by Jim McMahon MP, Dr. Carolyn Wilkins, the former council leader, the former council chief executive, Andy Burnham, the Greater Manchester Mayor, and his team, all of them, those reasons are in no way acceptable. They're in no way acceptable. And where I started this transmission, and why these people are so desperate to shut me down, is because the Recusant 9 transmissions and all the work I do has gone further than anywhere else in this country in holding those who failed our children to account. Because ultimately, we've named, despite their attempts to have me arrested and have me prosecuted, we've named them. We've evidenced it in a very systematic way. We've evidenced exactly what's taken place. And instead of just shouting and screaming, what we've done is translated all of the work we do into a political campaign where we have defeated politician after politician after politician at the ballot box. Council leader after council leader, senior councillor after senior councillor, and the MPs, Debbie Abrahams, Jim McMahon, Angela Rayner, have all scurried away, gone running. And if these transmissions were to continue, in May we would have taken out more councillors, another council leader perhaps, and we would have continued all the way to the general election, where we would have candidates standing on an anti-cartel, anti-child abuse, anti-grooming gang cover-up platform, taking the fight to Debbie Abrahams and taking the fight to Jim McMahon at the ballot box in the general election. And that was the aspiration. So when people ask me, can we not just continue? Can we not just continue? I'm not looking at next month or the month after or the month after that. I'm not even looking at the fact that I've given 5 years of my life already to this. The next phase takes us to the general election, which will be in December 24. We get to the next council all-outs in May. We won't have enough. We needed another 2 years after that. So the next phase of what we're doing, or what we would set out to do, is another 3 years. It's not 3 months. It's another 3 years. And that's the challenge we face. That is the reality of the challenge we face. Now, what most of you don't know is how I've been repeatedly hounded from when I first set up, I think it was Patreon, where you could sign up for £1, repeatedly hounded by the Labour Party supporting leftists. The ones who make the living of keeping our working classes poor and wanting to champion our people. Rather than our own people being able to champion themselves, they want to keep us down so they can, leech a wage from us. To the point where a few months ago, the local democracy reporter, Charlotte Green, who's funded by the BBC, funded by you, contacted me in a long list of questions, and one of which was how much money I earn. I don't make anyone pay. Separate to that, you've got the Pakistani gangsters, predominantly Pakistani, occasionally Bangladeshi, but predominantly Pakistani gangsters, fuming I've ruined it for them and their mates. They had a cosy arrangement. They had a council leader that was one of theirs. They had MPs in their pockets. And they could access whatever grant, and I use that term loosely, or purchase whatever building at knocked down prices they wanted from the council, who, to all extents and purposes, they were held to ransom. And then, even then, I've had others who followed some of the work, which I find really, really interesting. I find human nature interesting, always have, who've got very angry at me. I've shared with you Anita Lowe before. You all know about Debbie Cole, Paul Eric and all the others. I get all of that. Even today, even as I was starting today, have a look at the transmission link I put up on Facebook. You'll see a post from a man called Brian Hilton, Sr. Contacted me about a month ago, accusing me of all sorts, then sent me a message apologising because he'd made it up. Next thing you know, he's encouraging one of these Pakistani gangsters who I had to block, who, by the way, has been constantly sending me emails abusing me. And he's posting, I won't stop. Well, I'm not threatening here. This is not something I want to do. This is not something I want to do. But I find all of this completely unacceptable. over 4 years, and this isn't on me. This isn't on me. If the town wants to get to a place where it can fight the injustice, it sees all around it, and the tyranny that forces you to put your head down and not say anything in case something happens to you or your family, you lose your job, you lose your house, you get kicked out of your doctor's surgery. Yeah, mate. Wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me. Sorry, a very, very good evening. I launched into it without saying good evening to you properly. If you find value in these transmissions, this is the last of the Sunday night ones, please do press like. And I want to go through what these transmissions actually have been about, because there has been a plan and a strategy in the background. I've not shared it with you, but I find it interesting. People say, no, we can continue this. Someone else can do this. Someone else is doing this. We raise awareness elsewhere, Raja. What makes you so special? Let me show you. Let me show you what I've actually been doing. Perfect. There you go. Okay. There are plenty of other web pages that awareness raise. What do I mean by awareness raise? What do you guys mean by awareness raise? You post links to articles already in the news or information in the public domain. I do that, same as everyone else, but I go further. When I awareness raise on every post you'll ever have seen me do, after I raise awareness of what's going on, I explain why it's important. And then I connect it by exposing what they want to keep secret. So that's where most people stop. These are the two other elements which I do. I then amplify your frustrations, the injustices that you feel, and I advocate I speak on behalf of you, and most importantly, I articulate what matters to you in a way that they can't sideline you, they can't demonize you, and it makes it almost impossible for them to ignore what has taken place, because that's what we've been doing. And then, what I've been doing, beyond educating or explaining, I educate you. The term I was taught is this: it's capacity building. I build your capacity to speak for yourselves, to ask questions of your own, and to hold those in power to account. I then campaign, politically campaign, socially campaign. Where do you think that grooming gang report came from? Do you think Andy Burnham did it because he wanted to? Do you think Sean Fielding did it because he wanted to? And then what's also took place is I coordinate. I pull together all of the strands, and hopefully the consequence of that is we hold power to account. We hold the council to account. And do you know what that does? In a town where that has gone, it gives people hope. So no, I take offense to people who've been getting in touch with me. Oh, we'll continue, we'll carry on. Fine, you continue, carry on. But don't for 1 second think you've done what I do. Don't for 1 second think that. See, the problem with all of this, when we go private, when we do the private links, some of you share them all the time. Even though I've said not to, you share them. And one person gets hold of it, another person gets hold of it, and so on and so on. But that's by the by. If you want to achieve the political change you want to achieve in this town, then these transmissions need to be free so as many people as possible view them. That's what needs to happen. These transmissions need to be free so as many people as possible view them. And that's why, if you look at what's going down, the ticker at the bottom, I've always described myself as community funded. This work is funded by the community. Unfortunately, this work is not funded by enough of the community. It's not even supported by 200 people. Let me pause for a moment. If you're finding value, if you're one of the 170 people, and I've got a screen in front of me where I can see this, if you're one of the 170 people who are viewing this transmission right now, and you are yet to do so, press the like button if you're finding value in it. Give me a moment, and I will come back. Okay. So this was the week of a council meeting. And at that council meeting, we saw tyranny in full effect. First of all, the meeting got moved earlier in the afternoon. On the whim of the chief executive and his team. Hundreds of thousands of pounds they're paid, by the way, by you, the council taxpayer. And that council meeting got moved because on the odd chance England got through to the semi-finals of the World Cup. Would a bus driver have been able to decide to change his shift? A postman? A nurse? A cleaner? Even someone who works in a bank or a shop or a solicitor? No, of course not. But here we have a council chief executive decide he can do it just like that. Once the meeting had got moved, once again, the nightclub bouncers manned the front entrances to a public meeting. They had a list of people that they decided. Paul Bentwhistle, the borough solicitor, Harry Caffrell, and Elizabeth Drogan, Director of Constitutional Services. They decided that there are undesirables who were not allowed in. No law had been broken. They had falsely used police letter-headed paper to scare and intimidate and issue fake ASBI warning letters to some people who'd not even been in the meetings. Other people for apparently looking menacing and wagging their fingers. People were denied access. And if you weren't on that ban list, it was made so difficult to get into the council chamber. Where then there are screens to keep members of the public, as if it's a Belfast courtroom. You've got to show your ID, have your photograph taken, have your bag searched, your mobile phones inspected. One person made it through. One member of the public made it through into the council meeting. And then when the meeting started, Dr. Chauhan, the deputy mayor, who had been exposed, and his lawyers don't like me using that term, well, I'm going to use it again, exposed for his role in Royton Medical Centre and the damning. That's not my word, by the way. That's Amanda Chariton's word. Damning care quality inspection report into his medical practice and his subsequent failure to declare interests into Bardock, which had received the best part of £1 million from the council for services that don't make any sense. Well, not to me. Swabbing services where they're not actually swabbing members of the public, they're teaching people to swab. How many people did you teach to swab for the best part of £1 million of public money? How was that contract awarded and why was the interest not declared? Well, Dr. Chauhan, the deputy mayor, wasn't there. I refuse. Just give me 1 second. I refuse. Many people, so we're clear, many people have contacted me willing to fund the shortfall. I point blank refuse to take any more than £50 a month off anyone. Point blank refuse. He's in hiding. So Choan is in hiding. And this meeting starts. The priest is sat there. And I've gone back and looked at, I spoke with previous counsellors. And I asked them how prayers were said in the past and what the role of the chaplain was, or whatever the terminology is. And apparently the prayers would be said at the beginning and then they would leave. The religious representative, the mayor's chaplain or whatever she is, would never sit at the front table as though she was also presiding over events, because that's what sitting at the top table means. You're presiding over events and you're endorsing what's taking place. And so, the Conservatives have a go with their motion. Their motion is specifically around supporting veterans. And they had a list. And essentially there were two things, two elements to the motion. One was that we demographically collect information around veterans. There's the best part of 6,000 veterans in the town, and we demographically collect that data, because if we have that data, the same as we have data on women, or black people, or Muslims, or disabled people, we can then see if they are disproportionately affected, or failed, or in need of additional support. Because without the data, you can't make those informed decisions. It's legitimate. I don't like Max Woodvine. I think he went about it in a pompous, long-winded way. But fundamentally, what he was requesting in that part is completely understandable. 6,000, just under 6,000 veterans in Oldham that we know of. We don't collect the data to see how they're supported, how their families are supported, and whether or not we're meeting their needs effectively. Nothing wrong with that motion. The second element, or nothing wrong with that aspect of that motion, the second element of that motion was specific to wanting to make sure that the council, and it had the authority to do this, it has the authority to do this, when making decisions around the additional support it provides veterans, does not consider that the compensation awards that they've received from their time during service, and they might have lost their hearing or lost an arm, or you understand, yeah? They want to make sure that the VAT isn't counted as income. It shouldn't be counted as income. And if it is, we have the discretion to say it isn't counted as income. These are veterans. These are people who've served our country in wars. Yeah? This council, Arood Shah, Amanda Chadderton, have been more than vocal. Hannah Roberts have been more than vocal of the need to support refugees and asylum seekers. I'm not saying what their position is wrong. I'm simply saying they've been more than vocal on wanting to support asylum seekers. And wanting us to do more to support asylum seekers. Yet here we have veterans, our own. And those were the two aspects of the motion. You know what the cowards did? The cowards, Amanda Chadderton and Hannah Roberts, they were both, Hannah Roberts raised it, the amendment, and Amanda Chadderton, your leader, the leader of Oldham Council, seconded the motion, blocking a vote on support, whether or not we support veterans. They sent it to a committee. They sent it to a committee and blocked the vote. They'd previously amended motions, such as the grooming gang motion, the public inquiry, unlawfully against the Constitution. And this time, because they didn't want to vote on it in the same way they didn't want to vote. How can you not vote on the safety of our children? Well, it's the same people who don't want to vote on protecting and safeguarding and serving the veterans who'd served us and protected us. This is the face of Amanda Chadderton's Labour Party. Hannah Roberts was defeated in Royton. Straight away she gets back in Hollingwood. And I'll say this again. I am 100% certain that the opposition would have done better if the Recusant 9 movement had gone and campaigned in Hollingwood. But I intentionally did not campaign in Hollingwood because I wanted, is it selfishly? I don't know. I don't think it's selfish, but I wanted to demonstrate, because there's an all-out election in May, I wanted to demonstrate just how ineffective the opposition is if it is not coordinated and if it is not equipped with the knowledge, skills and expertise to fight a campaign. It wasn't just the cabinet, it was every Labour councillor. Every Labour councillor, Denise. And I agree with you. I think Canon Hurlstone is indeed a disgrace to her faith. She's a disgrace to any faith. So the Conservatives find their motion amended and sent off somewhere else. Then the Lib Dems, so it's not amended. The Conservatives find their motion sent to a committee where it'll be lost and you'll never see it come back again. Yes, Evan. And as shown during my transmission, at least 3 councillors were fast asleep. 3 Labour Party councillors, at least 3 Labour Party councillors were fast asleep. And then the Lib Dems have a motion. And it's to do with free school meals. It's to do with supporting people during the cost of living crisis. I don't like the Lib Dems. I thought the motion was late. They want to feed children over Christmas and they're having a vote on a Wednesday when schools were closing on a Friday. Like it wasn't even feasible. They should have done it at the meeting before. But even then, the council could have voted the motion through. What the council did was amend their motion so it's unrecognisable. The Lib Dems objected to it. But the council can do what they want. The Labour Party council can do what they want because they have enough seats to do what they want. These are the same people who've covered up the grooming and gang rape of children. Do you think they care about really feeding children? No. Because the £3 million in grants that they've had, significant chunks of it, they just siphoned off to their own projects. The showers you can access at the community leisure, Oldham community leisure facilities. You've got to go and fill in forms, shame yourself. And then you can go and have a free shower. Well, that'd be interesting to know how much each of those showers cost compared to the hundreds of thousands of pounds that Oldham Community Leisure have had siphoned to them from the council. This is the same council that gave them £400,000 or so for storage during COVID when the Queen Elizabeth Hall was sat empty. The warm banks that they promote and in the libraries, I'm not disputing the need for warm banks, but go and have a look to see how many hundreds of thousands of pounds, because the libraries are run by the councils. They've siphoned of that money to fund themselves. And this is consistently what the pattern of what's gone on. So they kick one motion into touch, into a committee never to be seen again. They amend the other. And this is what you've got. This is what you've got in the council. It is not a functioning democracy. Amanda Chatterton repeatedly got up, abused Brian Hoban. The majority of the time was spent grandstanding on a motion where the chief executive was going to write a letter to the government. They even sneaked Kaz in. That's the congestion zone, yeah? The congestion charging, they even sneaked that in terms of delegating responsibility back to the mayor via some committee that the Labour Party councillors were going to select who goes and sits on. So during all of this, they even sneaked through Kaz, because that's what that is. Amanda Chatterton had the opportunity to withdraw from the Places for Everyone scheme, which builds on our green belt, because the government had made an announcement. She was repeatedly given that opportunity to withdraw from that, step away from that, so we decide where we build our houses. No, she wasn't for doing that. Clearly because the council have got some arrangements already in place and some green spaces identified with some of their property developers, and my position is I think they're hoping they can get that rush start through before the government brings in the legislation. The government have said we're bringing in legislation so we don't have to build on green spaces. All Amanda Chatterton has got to say is, we know this is coming in and we're going to pause. We're going to step back. We're going to suspend all future developments until the legislation comes in. She won't do that. She's blaming the government, and at the same time, she's supporting Andy Burnham and his dodgy Greater Manchester Combined Authority. Towards the end of the meeting, and the meeting had not concluded, because the words to conclude the meeting had not taken place, had not been said. I played it back, it had not been said. The mayor had not concluded the meeting, and Mark Wilkinson wanted to raise an issue to do with keeping people out of council meetings, and that he'd been to prisons. He'd been in prisons where it was easier to get in. Remember, Mark Wilkinson was a former police officer, distinguished police officer. Immediately to the left and the right of the mayor, the chief executive and the borough solicitor intervened. Elizabeth Droken, the director of constitutional services, whipped her head round. And the mayor insisted that the meeting had ended and Mark Wilkinson could not speak. This is tyranny. This is what tyranny looks like. This is not a functioning democracy, people. This is what tyranny looks like. They all watch for free, Denise. They've all been watching for free for years. And as well as watching for free, which is fine, by the way. What I find even more comical is then they take the information I share and the analysis I share and try and pass it off as their own, again, which is fine. I just find it funny. I think it was very clear to all of us who viewed the video footage that there were multiple councillors fast asleep. Fast asleep. And I also like it, Julie. Clearly, it was me who drew attention to being fast asleep. So, Neil, Willa Booby, hello, Willa Booby. I'm still here, Willa Booby. What are you going to do next? Put pictures of my front door up? You've claimed all sorts of stuff about me. I'm a criminal. What was it you did? Reported me to the Inland Revenue, reported me to the Department of Works and Pensions, reported me to the police, deported me to the Serious Fraud Squad, reported me to who? Your mum? Your mistress? I ain't got one of those, have you, Willa Booby? No one touching the Willa Booby. No. What are you going to do? What next? What was it? The Attorney General. He'd written to the Attorney General's office because I had a coffee in Costa. And like I've said to you, that isn't on me, is it? I've given over 4 years of my life. I'm in court on Tuesday. Why do you think I'm in court on Tuesday? Let's be honest. Why does anyone think I'm in court on Tuesday? I'm 50 years old in May. I don't have a criminal record. I spent the last 18 months? And before that, the 18 months before? Under investigation by the police, at least. Why do you think a man such as myself, a law-abiding citizen, is in court on Tuesday in Wigan? I'm going to get to Wigan at some point on Tuesday. Why do you think the foot soldiers of the convicted heroin dealers and gangsters, dangerous criminals, are so concerned about trying to make me out to be a criminal when I've never been one? Why do you think that is? It's because they are trying to undermine everything I say. It's because they are trying to undermine everything I say and try and discredit me. That's what all this is about. Remember, from the outset, they wanted to take my MBE off me. An MBE I'd earned by the time I was 30 because I safeguarded our country from nutcases. And I stuck my neck out doing that. No different to how I'm sticking my neck out trying to protect my own town and my own people. Why do you think they arrested me and the Oldham Times ran with a story, maliciously, falsely, completely fabricated, that had been arrested as part of a child sex exploitation investigation? I didn't make that up. I've not imagined that. You've all seen that. Why? Why do you think they arrested me for what they refer to as a racially aggravated public order offence, when all I did was speak out, write an article objecting to anti-Semitism on the streets of our town and the waving of Hamas banners? I wasn't supporting those things. I was objecting to those things. The opposition to tyranny in this town is coordinated from my living room. It is as simple as that. There's no arrogance here when I say that. It is as simple as that. The opposition to the Labour Party controlled cartel alliance is from here. It is not just the hours I put in. One of my friends contacted me this week. Apparently Anita Lowe objected to me claiming I spend 50 hours a week doing what I do. Well, tell you what, Anita, and anyone else that's interested. If I spend 50 hours a week doing what I do, perhaps you can do it in 5. And I'm too slow. I hold my hands up. I'm not as sharp now as I once was. I'm slower than I was. Genuinely. I'm slower than I was. So perhaps you can do it in 5 or 15. I've not seen you do it. Not seen anyone else do it. And no, I've not got my watch on my wrist today, I'm afraid. Otherwise, I'd have been showing off the time. So let's get on to that. There is a Facebook page. Some of you follow it, I would imagine. Does well. 40, 50,000 followers. I can't compete with anything like that. Oldham News and Media. Oldham News and Media is run by a man called Kasim Lenny, a Pakistani goon. Kasim Lenny, from the offset, has been abusing me, harassing me. He claimed I was a gay Christian convert. The reason why he claimed I was a gay Christian convert and used Oldham News and Media to promote all of that to his 40,000 viewers, followers, was because being gay and being a Christian convert in Islam is an open, it's a death sentence. Greater Manchester Police knew, refused to arrest him because arresting him doesn't fit the narrative of what they're up to. So Oldham News and Media and Irish Shimmy being the convicted heroin dealing getaway driver of the cop killer Dale Cregan. He can be whatever he wants to be a Rude Shah. He can have whatever support he wants from Jim McMahon, the MP. He can walk up and down the council corridors with the freedom of the council chamber in a way in which 83-year-old pensioners, former councillors of the town are denied. Law-abiding citizens are denied. But this convicted mobster can go to council meetings and get invited into the count. What these people do is they now describe him as a humanitarian. His last conviction was 2 years ago, more or less at this point, and he's due in court for breaching his restraining order against me. He's a convicted criminal. He's a career criminal. And this convicted criminal and career criminal, who remember had this vigilante street patrol, what happened to that vigilante street patrol? Is it because we exposed it that it couldn't go out and coordinate the postal votes? What happened to that vigilante street patrol? Where is it? Didn't last, did it? Now that Arood Shah isn't in Chadderton South, the vigilante street patrol isn't in Chadderton South. So, he's now been promoted as his humanitarian, and he's working in partnership with an organisation called REAL, REELCIC. Let me bring it up, give me 1 second. Here we go. Real CIC. A young mother sadly passed away, and all of that I get. I'm not getting drawn into that. Local charity Real CIC raised some funds on their behalf. So a reformed humanitarian Irish Shimmy, who is working with the local charity Real CIC, and this is them posing with the balloons and stuff. That's Irish on the end. Gangsters trying to clean up their image is nothing new, or people with dubious past trying to clean up their image is nothing new. What is completely unacceptable is Real CIC. CIC means Community Interest Company. And you can see here, this is their webpage, and you can see who's there. Arud Shah. And that's at Madlow, I think. There is not a chance in hell. There is not a chance in hell a convicted heroin dealer imprisoned for in his role as the getaway driver of an Oldham cop killer, whose most recent criminal conviction was less than 2 years ago, will have passed an enhanced DBS check. There's not a chance in hell that any organisation that works with vulnerable children and families, which is what Real CIC claim they do, should have him as a volunteer or in any way work with him. And if they are doing so, there is not a chance in hell that the council should be funding Real CIC. And the last I looked at, they were funded at £60,000 or £70,000 last year. He never passed a DBS check. That's the point, mate. Real CIC should never have gone anywhere near him. John, you, Jack, and some of the others, come back when you subscribe, mate. Come back when you subscribe. I'll release the information as and when I choose to do so. As always the case, I'll release the information as and when I choose to do so, and I will choose to do so when, as proven, if you guys knew what you were doing, and you've been doing it much longer than I have, you'd have got much further. I'll release the information as and when I choose to do so, and that will be at a time, if I'm still here, that will be at a time when it is most devastating and has the most impact. He never passed a DBS check. He'd never pass a DBS check. The council should not be funding an organisation. The council should not be funding an organisation that allows a convicted criminal like this to have access to children. Madlow, which whilst funded by the council is independent, with a whole host of sponsors, should not be allowing Real CIC or any other organisation or community venue across Oldham should not be allowing Real CIC access to their facilities to deliver any form of provision until Real CIC have explained their role with a convicted heroin dealer. I'm very clear what I said when I brought it up. I'm very clear what I said when I brought it up. Mate, put your real name up. Invest in some equipment and go for it. A question needs to be asked at the next council meeting. Because my understanding is Real CIC also deliver provision in Royton as well as Fitton Hill and other parts of the town. A councillor with the courage, and it can't be the FIP, it can't be FIP every time. A councillor should stand up and demand answers from Amanda Chadderton as to the council's relationship with Real CIC and whether it will be suspending its relationship pending a formal investigation into its policies and procedures. You cannot allow this. And so we're clear as to who Real CIC are. The people involved in Real CIC. It's a woman called Charlene Joanne Burns. And this is on Company's House, so all this is legal because they'll get angry and go running to lawyers. I'm afraid this is on Company's House. You can see it's on Company's House. Charlene Joanne Burns, Kelly Ann Higson, and Kimberly Linda Lowe. Two of them are at Levington Drive. All three of them, the correspondence address is Levington Drive, so I presume that's where their offices are. And if you look at the filing history, and their most recent full accounts, Kimberly Linda Lowe is the director who signs off the accounts. And they go into extensive detail as to the work they do. Emergency crisis clothing and essential baby items. The direct stakeholders include our valuable volunteers, children, young people, adults of all backgrounds, children and young people. You can see straight away. And they pay themselves £18,000. I ain't got a problem with directors paying themselves in a small CIC like this. They'll be responsible for delivering the work. Women's empowerment work. Community researcher for Oxfam. Oldham Stronger Together network. Walking groups. You can see recruited and trained 15 volunteers. 3 volunteers are undertaking training NVQ level 3 to develop youth work skills. You'll have to decide if Irisham is one of those volunteers. Hangout Junior Youth Club at Fitton Hill. And for those who question my link to Madlaw, here you see it. See, in their own words, working in partnership with Salvation Army and Madlaw Oldham, funded by Oldham Metropolitan Borough Council. You can see it there. That's their own returns. Play Street Youth Diversionary Activities. 540 children. Goes on and goes on and goes on. First Choice Homes are a partner of theirs. Satellite Centre in Saddleworth are a partner of theirs. Chadderton Alt, Coldhurst. This organisation should not be anywhere near delivering a single activity. It should be immediately suspended, pending a formal investigation. Amanda Chadderton, the leader of Oldham Council, knows this, and I hope a councillor stands up and is brave enough to call this out at the next council meeting. And it is that, mate. It is that. It is mafia-like, isn't it? Years ago, the Italian mafia used to embed itself within the Catholic Church and various connected charities and advertise the fact. Can you see the similarities? Yes, I can. Yes, I can. All of these partners have to pull out because it's in violation of their own child protection policies. They got big because Arud Shah's council funded them. The funding went up from whatever it was, 20-odd thousand pound a year to 130-odd thousand pound a year. Why did they become flavour of the month? What did they do in return? I don't know. What I do know is a community interest company, and it's not a charity community interest company. They're regulated in a different way, but they have a regulator. And if they piss me off, I'll be writing to the regulator. And this isn't for real to do, this is for the council to do. Because the council have a statutory duty to safeguard children. This organisation has openly confirmed, as per the video that they put up on Oldham News and Media, is openly working in partnership with a convicted heroin dealer. Amanda Chadderton knows that would not be allowed of any council-funded project. So why is it being allowed here? Is there some exception because Arud Shah supports them? Who's really in charge of the council? Amanda Chadderton. Is it you? Is it your officers? Or is it, as many of us suspect, something far more sinister than that? I'd suspect do you not remember last year or the year before when that organisation wanted to build a HMO in Shaw and suddenly a brand new company was donating hundreds of thousands of pounds of PPE equipment and Arud Shah was stood there with the directors? I'm going to go and get a cup of coffee. I'll come back. Oh, actually, a cup of Vimto. Too late for coffee for me now. I'm going to go and get a cup of Vimto. I'm going to come back. I'll take a series of questions. As we stand, so we're clear, I stopped promoting the Buy Me a Coffee some time ago, hoping that we could increase our subscriptions. So the Buy Me a Coffees have stopped and the subscriptions have stalled. So I didn't do myself any favours if I wanted to make any money. Since we started this transmission, there's been one new subscriber on the £1 a month scheme. Thank you very, very much. I don't name any of the subscribers and all the subscriber information is confidential. I've got it on some secure server via this, so it's nothing that gets out in the public domain. But I'll bring the screen up and you'll have a look. But I'm just going to go and get myself a Vimp. So if you're yet to like, please consider liking the transmissions. There is, as I speak, 214 of you. Over the course of the last week, 5,000 separate views. 5,000 separate views. I'll go and get a drink. Give me a moment. If you've got questions, start putting them up. And I'll go through them systematically. Okay. First question, is Arooj coming back? Arooj Shah is one of the 3 Labour Party candidates in St Mary's. The Labour Party forced out one of the female councillors and shifted her to Werneth to free up a space for Arooj Shah. And the 3rd candidate is Ghazala Rahman, I think. She stood in Leeds last time. Ghazala's just a proxy candidate. She's not going to get in. So the Pakistani cartels in St Mary's have agreed that the 3 votes will go to Akil Salamat, Arooj Shah, and Aftab, who's strong enough, will get as the independent, will get the 3rd vote. So that's what's been agreed amongst the Pakistanis. That's my information. So Arooj, as it stands, is coming back. There is a way of beating her. St Mary's includes, significant white areas. It's not all Glodic. And if the white vote was to be mobilised to strategically vote for Akil, Salamat, Aftab, and then Ghazala, the 3rd Labour Party candidate, what would happen is Arooj would get the least number of votes. But for that to happen, a campaign needs to be run, awareness raising needs to take place, all of those sorts of things. You decide who's going to do that. Who's going to do that? I'm not sure what you're putting a freedom of information in for, but if it's to do with real CIC, you can't. The freedom of information won't get you it's not a freedom of information, really, request, Lynn. The only freedom of information element in this would be, does Oldham Council fund real CIC? 1. Which venues and locations does it fund it? And how much does it fund it for? Has it done an inspection or an audit of its policies and procedures before funding it? Those are the sorts of questions you could ask. It needs to be a senior councillor. It needs to be the likes of Dave Arnott, who, to give him his due, at the last council meeting embarrassed a senior policeman by asking him about who blew up Arooj Shah's car and why has no one been convicted yet or charged yet. You can see how uncomfortable the policeman was. So that's what the free FOI can do, is draw out of them exactly how much they're funded, where they're working and what they're funded to do, and whether the policies and procedures have been inspected. Oh, yeah. And someone's posted, I think it was one of our newer followers, about the 50 hours a week. It is 50 hours a week. It's more or less 7 days a week I work over. And I've done this for the last 4 years. And if I did it for money, I wouldn't be here, would I? My frustration is, well, you know what my frustration is. And it's less than that, isn't it, Marlene? Because since we, in fact, let me unplug this and plug this in so you can see my computer screen, if I can get it right. There we go. So what this is my dashboard at the back end of Ghost. So you can see, ignore the 1,070. That's what comes in that way. With £211 short a month is what we are. With £211 short a month, we have a total members of 484. You can see up here. Let me just make this bigger for you so you can see it a bit better. Total members of 484. Paid members, and that includes the complimentary members, actually. So there's a few people who are just, give all access to because they had no money and they've been in touch, so it's fine. I never have an issue with that. 197, but 287 freed members. And you can see up until the 19th of November, so give or take, my income there was £567 a month, and that's the most it had been for over a year. And since we said we were winding down, it's gone up. And some people have unsubscribed as well. So you can see the highest was 1,074. It went down a bit. We're at 1,070. But along with the direct debits that's coming, we're just £211 short. And you can see the paid subscribers and the people who've cancelled. I had a lot of people cancel when I first went free to air, which I found disappointing. But this is the bit I want to share with you. The engagement. So what I did since we last spoke, because my members, the most I can have is 500, and then it goes up in terms of payment. It goes up significantly, and I can't afford to increase the subscription tier because everything I spend money out on my end is also on subscriptions. So I get up to 500 for a certain amount, a couple of hundred a year, I think, but then it goes up to like £30 a month or something. I can't afford to do that to get beyond 500 members. So what I did was I opened up the free members and looked to see those who weren't subscribed to the newsletter. So I got rid of them. I freed up half a dozen spots, and then I got rid of another half a dozen or so, which was to do with those who were clearly fake accounts or who'd not opened content in this year. So that left us with 287 free members. You can see the engagement figures. So this is all members. 79%, ignore the 67% for now. So 79% of everyone, of all 484, engaged in the last 30 months. So these are people who actively click onto the web page, open newsletters. The free members, 78%. So nearly 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10 of the free members I take value from this. That's separate to the 5,000 this week. So that's where we're up to, I'm afraid. We have lots of free members, but the vast majority didn't even take up the 2.5 pence a week a day. 2.5 pence a day, £1 a month subscription. So that's where we are with that. You can stay. Depends how you want to stand. The formal process is that the council announced the election just before Purdah, and there's a window of opportunity with a deadline. I think 3 weeks or 4 weeks before. You've got to get the forms in. So people can stand, but standing won't get you over the line, will it? I mean, it because there's something about running a campaign, isn't there? There's something about running a successful campaign. But you've got till March, April even, to get your forms in. A window opens and the window closes, and you've got to fill a form and send it back. And then the council list everyone who's filled in the form and are standing as candidates, and whether they're standing as a formal candidate for a party or a... But by that deadline, if you're genuinely standing as a candidate and the first people see, or you decide, is to put your name in at that later stage without having done any campaigning beforehand, and targeted campaigning, real specific targeted campaigning with marked registers, knowing which doors to lock on, knowing which messages will resonate in the community, knowing how to communicate, having trust, legitimacy, authenticity, all of those things. All of that work is done beforehand. Julie Hayward, mate, she gave a statement to the police a couple of weeks ago. Perfectly, if that's what you're asking. We're in regular contact with the complainant. Indeed, Tony. Sarood Shah's car gets blown up, yeah? What she claims about her mother, thinking she was in the car, and the way that story is told, you'd have thought the car was outside her front door. Well, it wasn't outside her front door, it was on the street without line of sight to her front door. Then the video comes out, and it shows that the doors were unlocked, and it clearly shows a window is smashed after the door has been opened. If it had been me or if it had been you, the police would have interviewed me or you under caution, believing that, well, at least wanting to clear us from any role we might have had in the blowing up of our own car. Am I right? Am I wrong? Yet, the most senior police officer in Oldham continues to refer to Arooj Shah as the complainant. Actually, every one of us is a complainant. This is the leader of our council. Whatever I think of it, this is the leader of our council. A car was blown up. I'm outraged. This is happening in a democracy. And I can't believe over a year later, nearly 18 months or so, the police have yet to charge anyone. What are they in regular contact with her for? My suspicion, and again, I'm just sharing my thoughts on this. My suspicion is if they charge the lads who did it and they start talking, it takes everyone to an uncomfortable place. That's my suspicion. The truth is too difficult to handle, and the consequences of that. Well, there you go. Bardock is Dr. Chauhan's company. He claims it's not his company. Remember, he was in the newspapers claiming it's not his company, but his lawyer's letter to me confirms it is his company. He's a director of. Now, you can argue what it means by his company or what sort of company it is, but he's a director of and he signs the paperwork. I think the old Proud of lot under the new name of Oldham Metropolitan Party or whatever it is, I think they've got some candidates in the Saddleworth wards. Oldham Heart, I've got some candidates. I know the Coldest Independents are hoping to put up, I think, 2 or 3 candidates in Coldest. You're not going to get over the line with enough councillors to take out the Labour Party in May. That's the truth of it. I'm sharing with you truths. These are uncomfortable truths, but I'm sharing with you truths. If it was me coordinating this campaign, I would put everything behind the Royton Independents. And if I was in another part of the town where I know there isn't a candidate or a candidate with a dubious agenda or has no chance in really winning, I would go and help in Royton. Like we did in Chadderton South, I would go and help in Royton. But who's going to coordinate that for me? Who's going to pull all that together? Who's going to produce the leaflets? Who's going to tolerate phone calls from the police and back them back and say, no, this is a democracy. I've cross-referenced my leaflets. I've got my name on it. I filled in the forms properly. And this information can be put through letterboxes. And who's going to then have the information that's put through letterboxes where the words are formatted properly? And the leaflet looks professional enough so someone picks it up and not only reads with it, thinking, what on earth is this? But then sees how it is set out and framed and understands that this is a serious piece of paper. ever be revealed, do you? As to who blew up her car. And I think that then reveals what that was all about, which was a setup. My understanding is Paul Shilton is standing in Saddleworth Western Lees. I don't know if there's any other candidates in Saddleworth Western Lees or from his party, the Oldham Metropolitan Party or whatever they're called. I think the other, sorry, my apologies to Mark Ince and his team. I think the other party that genuinely will take seats is Mark Ince's Shaw Independents, Sean Crompton Independents. They will take seats. I think they'll take one in Crompton. And I think if they campaign effectively, they'll take one, at least one in Shaw. But that doesn't affect the Labour Party majority, does it? I mean, it's good that they will. It's great. I haven't got an issue with that. In fact, I'm pleased for Mark Ince and his team. I think you're stuck, aren't you, Solly? There is an existing Labour Party councillor in one of the Saddleworth wards. I think Saddleworth, is it Saddleworth? No, George Hume. It's Hannah Roberts, his son. You know that horrible woman in the council meeting who stood up and blocked the vote into the veterans? It's her son. Honestly, me, as it stands, with the information I now have, as unpalatable as it is, I'd vote the Conservatives. The independents are a joke. You know, the remnants of Paul Eric and the Proud of lot, they wouldn't know the first thing about campaigning if, you know, there's a sequence, there's a method. When the leaflets come out, what the leaflets say, what complements the leaflets. Putting a rosette up and sticking your thumb up isn't going to get you elected. St. James. Amoy's always stood, hasn't she? She stood independently before. She stood on the Proud of Oldham and Saddleworth when it existed. And I think she's going back to standing independently. I like Amoy. Decent woman. Does a lot for charity, the Caribbean. You know, that put aside the food stuff. You know, decent family woman. Good sense of... a good moral compass. Too busy to campaign. You don't know what you don't know. Yeah, you don't know what you don't know. It's not a criticism. Could a coordinated Recusant 9 campaign get Amoy over the line? Tell you what, I guarantee I'd double her votes from whatever she got last time. Beth Sharp will lose a seat in St. James, not necessarily because of what she's done or not done, but because of the national animosity towards the Conservatives, particularly in the historical red wall towns and cities such as ours. The Tories made a series of promises and they've reneged on pretty much all of them. So I think Beth Sharp will lose her seat. You've got that Oldham Eye's favourite guy, Josh Charters, is standing as a candidate in St. James, along with Leanne Munro. I don't know who their third candidate is, the Labour Party's third candidate is. But believe me when I say Oldham will have hit a new low when an individual such as Josh Charters has been elected as a councillor. We could get over the line with a proper campaign, starting as late as January, we could get her over the line. Same with the Royton Independents. But again, I don't work for them. I support them. I will help fill in their forms and the rest of it, but I don't work for them. I don't produce their content. Which goes on to this question, doesn't it? That's not up to me. People who've invested in me, supported me, and what I'm going to do is leave the fundraiser open over Christmas. There's no need to rush into switching everything off. Leave the fundraiser open over Christmas and see if we get to a position where we get the last £211. I can't see it myself. And in terms of the work I do post-Christmas, I mean, I've been clear, these transmissions, these Sunday night live transmissions that take 50 hours a week, they'll end. But then what do I do after that? If there's an opposition to support in a targeted way, which is the questions you've all gone to asking of your own volition, not me, then my immediate thoughts are to try and focus on bolstering that opposition in Royton South, in St James's, in Shaw and Crompton if I'm useful, wherever I can add value, wherever I can make a difference. But this generic capacity building and all the things I've gone through, well, it's ineffective, isn't it? As much as it gives us all a place and all the rest of it, we haven't been able to get over the line with the way we needed to or wanted to. And is it the best use of my resource between January and May? My time? I'm hoping I see as many of you as possible on Tuesday night. There is a meal booked. And we can talk. We can talk in person. We can talk in person, and as Tony says. Yeah, it's not helping, is it? I mean, it's not just about helping. And it's not a criticism of you, Lynn. Why would you know any different? Why would anyone know any different? It's the running of an election campaign. It's the running of a successful election campaign. It isn't about just handing out some leaflets. It's complex, it's multi-layered, and it's sophisticated. And you can't just wake up one day and decide you can do it. It's like being a chef. You can't just wake up one morning and decide you're a master chef. The Labour Party and the Conservatives have paid campaigners. There's a reason why. I agree with you, Gary. A Saddleworth Independent Party would do very well in Saddleworth. Unfortunately, there isn't one, is there, mate? And the deadline to register parties with the Electoral Commission, fill in all the forms and all the rest of it, I think is January the 20th. We've got the forms off for the Royton Independents, but the deadline is January the 20th. That's exactly. He's going to be a councillor, mate. Seriously, he's going to become a councillor. I like Evan's dedication to this. If you set it up, if you decide you're setting it up, Gary, let me know. I'll happily fill in the forms for you, mate. Like I've done with all of the independents. I've freely supported all of them. I'll happily fill in the forms for you, mate. Get you registered. But the deadline's the 20th. I'm sure it's the 20th of January for the Electoral Commission. And you're right, Dean. Particularly from a standing start. The campaigns for May have to start in January. Yeah. And you're right, Gary. You'd need 6. You'd need 6. But the reality is, because the Conservatives will lose seats, I think they'll lose Robert Barnes in Chadderton South. Puts aside all the issues that's gone on, the only chance Robert Barnes has, remember they've abandoned him, so he owes them nothing. The only chance Robert Barnes has of succeeding in Chadderton is standing under the banner of a Chadderton Independent Party. I'm 100% certain of that. The only chance Robert Barnes has of winning in Chadderton South is standing under the banner of a Chadderton Independent Party and then building something. Many of the Failsworth Independent team were Conservatives before they became Failsworth Independents. So that's the only chance he has of holding his seats. Otherwise, it'll go to Labour. It'll go back to Labour. Beth Sharp will lose her seat and it'll go back to Labour. If Dave Arnott and Lewis Quigg, and I think it was you who asked the question, Lynn. If Dave Arnott and Lewis Quigg don't reach out to Maggie Hurley and her Royton independent team and form an alliance, both of them will lose, I think. Both of them will lose. Not per se because of what they've done, but because of the national climate. And if they lose, the likelihood is, if the Royton independents don't stand there, the likelihood is those 2 seats will go to Labour. Yeah, of course they would. Roberts never won an election there, no matter how many times he stood, until we went and campaigned there. The difference in Chadderton South was a coordinated Recusant 9 campaign of a type not seen anywhere before. There's an entire article about it on my webpage, Red Wall and the Rabble. Go and read it, you'll see. I'm telling you now, Robert won't get elected as a Conservative in Chadderton South. I'd be very, very surprised. Yes, Julie, it's on Featherstall Road. It's just past where the old Werneth train station used to be and opposite where OMC Ford was, if that makes any sense. No, it's not likely to happen, is it? Because who's going to go and do the work? We keep going back to the same place. Who's going to go and do the work? Yeah, 7, if you get there for give or take 7. Tuesday night. I'm in court on Tuesday earlier on. So Tuesday night. Indeed, Evan. It is indeed a Merry Christmas. So the way these transmissions are going to work is this is the last of the Sunday night ones. If we hit our target over Christmas in January, I'll come back. We don't hit our target, and I'm not going to push it over Christmas. I think you all know where we're at, and everyone who was going to support us has supported us. And those who want it for nothing, well, good luck to you. And then after Christmas, if the transmissions don't continue because we've not hit the funding target, with the support I've got, and some of you may decide, it's not what you want to do and cancel your subscriptions, and that's completely fine. Plenty of you have already cancelled your subscriptions, and that's completely fine. But my intention would be not to spend 50 hours a week doing this, but to be more targeted in the places where we can make a difference in May's election. And I'm not sure how that will transpire as of yet. I'm genuinely disappointed. I think after 4.5 years, I'd have got to a place where we wouldn't be £200 short. Thank you, Tony. You can and I'll speak to you all on Tuesday, Tony. I think you can all see what my, this then becomes. As it stands, this isn't effective. And it's fine, it's good for my ego, perhaps. And say, oh, we've got 5,000 viewers, we've got 10,000 viewers, we've had 1 million minutes over the last year, and we have had 1 million minutes plus. That's not what I'm here for, is it? If you find these transmissions of value, perhaps for the last time, if you find these transmissions of value, then please find £1 or 5 or 10 and subscribe to the webpage. 20 more subscriptions at £10 and we're over the line. And for those who contact me saying, you should carry on, you should do this, well, I've been carrying on for 4.5 years. And it's, well, you decide what it's cost me and what I've risked. 20 more people with £10, 4 more people with a £50 sponsorship. We're back in January. We do this, and we also do the targeted campaigning in Royton, in Shaw, in St James, and so on. I had the 12 Days of Christmas written out. My version of the 12 Days of Christmas written out. Thank you for my first samosas of the evening. I've got the... On the first day of Christmas, my brother Jamal, he bringing me a samosa and some mango chutney.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.